Hello and welcome. You're watching NDTV. I'm Sarah Jacob. Let's get you up to date with all the news around the world today. First, close to 75,000 people died in Bihar of unexplained causes in the first 5 months of 2021, which coincided with the deadly second wave. New data has shown this is almost 10 times the state's official pandemic death figures, raising the question of whether the state is undercounting its COVID deaths.
Indicating a possible undercounting of COVID deaths in the state, the civil registration system data for Bihar shows that close to 75,000 unexplained excess deaths took place in 2021 when compared to a pre-COVID year, 2019. According to the data, between January and May 2019, there were about 1.3 lakh deaths reported in the state. During those same months in 2021, there were 2.2 lakh deaths reported, an excess of 82,500 deaths. Now, the official COVID death figures for this period were 7,717. Now, remember, Bihar had revised its COVID death toll. They had added about 4,000 backlog deaths. Though the government did not specify when these deaths took place, we have assumed that all of them took place in the January to May 2021 period. So, unexplained excess deaths in the state stood at about 74,800, or almost 10 times the official COVID death toll in the state, raising the question of whether, despite revising its COVID death numbers, Bihar was still undercounting COVID deaths. We also have to keep in mind that all this is based on the death registry data, and Bihar has historically had a poor track record when it comes to registering deaths. So even these figures could be an underestimation.
And on Saturday, the Patna High Court once again pulled up the Bihar government for what it described as and I'm quoting here, opaque system for maintaining birth and death records. The court categorically stated that for whatever reasons, the state is reluctant to put in the public domain the deaths during the pandemic period. The court went on to say that in our view, this resistance is uncalled for. Such action is neither protected by any law nor in consonance with good governance settled principles. The court also said that transparency is the hallmark of good governance. And a private hospital in Uttar Pradesh's Agra, whose owner was allegedly caught on audio bragging about how they shut off oxygen supply on the 27th of April for 5 minutes in a mock drill amidst the COVID crisis, has been cleared of allegations that the exercise led to the deaths of 16 patients. A committee of investigators in its report concluded that none of the 16 deaths at the hospital was due to the mock drill. But family members of the dead point out that missing from the report is the date and time of death of each patient and their oxygen saturation before death. Meher Pandey reports.
एक ट्रायल मार दो दोपहर में, एक मॉक ड्रिल करके देख लो, समझ जाएंगे कौन सा मरेगा कौन सा नहीं मरेगा। सही बात है, सही बात है। एक मॉक ड्रिल करी हमने सुबह 7 बजे, मॉक ड्रिल हुई, सब दोषी नंबर, ये किसी पता नहीं है, ये मॉक ड्रिल कराई, सुन कर दी सबकी, फिर छट गए 22 मरीज, तुरंत खोल दिए गए।
22 मरीज छट गए,
और भाई साहब ये मरेंगे।
और कितनी देर के लिए मॉकड्रिल करा?
5 मिनट के।
5 मिनट में 22 मरीज मॉकड्रिल,
नीले पड़ने लगे।
ओहो ओहो।
This terrifying video, where a hospital owner is bragging about cutting off oxygen supply to his patients, went viral on the 8th of June. According to official records, 10 people died on the 26th of April, the day Jain ordered the drill. 6 more died the next day on the 27th, 16 in all. But the investigation has concluded that none of the 16 deaths are related to the so-called drill. All 16 died due to their comorbidities or because they had severe COVID symptoms, says the report.
Jain, who spoke to us via a phone call, admitted that at least 7 of the 16 who have died were amongst the 22 who turned blue during his oxygen drill. But this key detail is missing from the death audit report.
Also missing from the report, which seems to be a reproduction of a case summary submitted by Jain himself, is the date and time of death of each patient and their oxygen saturation before death. Medical experts told us that this is essential to determine whether oxygen was cut off.
The recordings on the monitors could be looked at and see the saturation levels of these patients? What was it at a certain point of time, and was there a sudden dip in saturation in multiple patients at the same point of time?
दुनिया में डॉक्टर से विश्वास उठ जाएगा.
The report doesn't refer to the testimonies of the families of those who died. Like Meena Sharma, whose son-in-law Karthikeya died that day, insists that the so-called drill contributed to Karthikeya's death.
25 तारीख को हम उनको अच्छा खासा छोड़कर आए हैं. बेटी ने उनको दलिया खिलाया था अपने हाथ से. थोड़ा सा उन्होंने पपीता भी खाया था. उसके बाद हमको सुबह सुबह ये पोजीशन देखने को मिल रही है कि एकदम सीरियस हो गए. बिल्कुल रिकवर होते होते ये इस तरीके से नहीं हो सकता है, और ये ऑक्सीजन रोकने की वजह से ही हुआ है. 100% इसी वजह से हुआ.
But her version has not made it to the final report. At least 7 families had submitted complaints, but the report only cites Jain's own statements as evidence for his innocence. As of today, Jain's hospital is sealed, and he's been charged with minor sections of the Disaster Management Act for spreading false rumors and panic about the oxygen shortage.
Families of the deceased feel this investigation was a sham, and some are taking the matter to court. If and when there will be a real attempt to find out what actually happened remains to be seen. With Naseem Ahmed, Meher Pandey for NDTV.
And just as those families have been forever scarred, the fallout of the pandemic is going to be felt for years to come. Many students have had their education derailed because of it, as the coronavirus pandemic has left many parents jobless. Here's a report from Maharashtra.
Regular sight outside this private school in Charkop, Mumbai. Every day a large number of parents gather here outside the school gates. Each of them desperately trying to convince the school principal to restart their children's education. Schools in Mumbai reopened on Monday, but those who haven't paid the fees have not been admitted into the online classes.
तो हम फी भरने के लिए मना तो करने रहे, हम लोग भरेंगे. अभी सब लोग परेशान हैं, लोगों की नौकरियां गई है, हमारे पास जॉब नहीं है, तो बच्चों का पढ़ाई रोक के आप बच्चों को फी भरने के लिए बोल रहे हैं, तो बहुत गलत बात है.
Deepak Salvi's transport business hit a bumpy road with the pandemic, and he has barely been able to run the house. His 14-year-old son has not been allowed to attend the online classes at his school. Uday Ahire too is desperate. A driver at an app-based company, his dream was to educate his children at a good school to secure their future. He lost his job when the pandemic hit and has been struggling to make ends meet.
हम लोग को तो परिस्थिति ऐसी है कि मेरी मम्मी खुद कैंसर की वजह से अभी 9 तारीख को ऑफ हो गई है, और 1 साल से मेरा वो इलाज चल रहा था. इसके लिए मेरा तो बहुत दिक्कत हो गया. मैंने उनको रिक्वेस्ट बहुत किया, वो बोले हमारे हाथ बंधे हुए, हम लोग को ऊपर से ऑर्डर आता है दादर से, वो जो बोलते हैं वही हम लोग करते हैं.
Sara Saeed was always proud of the fact that her 2 children used to study in an English medium school. Sara worked as a mehendi artist at weddings, but work has been negligible for the last year and a half. Since she could not pay their school fees this year, her children had to drop out.
बच्चे अच्छे मार्क्स लेके आते थे. मेरे बच्चे एक तो 87 लाया था, एक 71. अच्छे मार्क्स आते थे दोनों के. दोनों स्कूल टीचर और ट्यूशन टीचर दोनों बोलती थी कि बच्चा पढ़ने में बहुत अच्छा, आपका कोई शिकायत नहीं है. तो राशन तक दूसरों से हम ले लेके खा रहे. गेहूँ पड़े घर में, अभी भी परसों बाजू वाले से राशन कार्ड होता है, वो फ्री का गेहूँ मंगा के हम लोग ने घर को संभाला है. तो
Lakshmi Kamble, who lives in Mankhurd area of Mumbai, is the only earner in her family. She provided for everyone by selling vegetables. Last year, her daughter was not promoted from class 6 to 7 due to non-payment of fees. This year, her child has been forced to stay at home without an education.
मेरे पास बिल्कुल ही नहीं था, तो मैं कहाँ से भरूँ सर. अभी लॉकडाउन में सब अपने अपने प्रॉब्लम बताते हैं, किससे मांगने का. इसके लिए मैं अपना चुपचाप मैं घर पे रुकी. मैं क्या बोलूं अभी आगे उनको.
State Education Minister Varsha Gaikwad has tweeted that action will be taken against anyone stopping the education of any child. But it does not seem to have any effect on the ground. Now a PIL has been also filed in the High Court, whose next hearing will be on June 22nd. Meanwhile, many dreams stand shattered.
ये आज का बच्चा कल का फ्यूचर है. ये लोग ये नहीं देख रहा है कल का फ्यूचर खराब कर रहा है.
People who have been impacted the most in the last 1.5 years are the same people who are now forced to keep their children away from the schools. While education was the only way for them to have a secure future, but now they are being kept away from this as well. In Mumbai, with Ashok Mahadik and camera person Sanjay Mandal, Sohit Mishra, NDTV.
A terrible, shocking report there. Meanwhile, the National Conference leader Omar Abdullah has said that his party has got a formal invite for an all-party meeting with Prime Minister Modi on Thursday. This is Prime Minister Modi's first major outreach to end the political impasse over ending Jammu and Kashmir's special status in 2019.
A meeting with all parties of Jammu and Kashmir coming Thursday. It's the Prime Minister's first major outreach to end the political impasse after scrapping of Jammu and Kashmir's special status in 2019. National Conference leader Omar Abdullah told NDTV that he has received a formal invitation for the meeting and that the meeting is at 3 p.m. on Thursday. PDP leader Mehbooba Mufti said that she has received a call and is expecting a formal invite soon. The PDP will be holding a meeting on Sunday to take a call on attending the meeting.
पार्टी की जो पॉलिटिकल अफेयर्स कमेटी है, PAC है, उसका एक इजलास तलब किया गया है कल, जिसको महबूबा मुफ्ती साहिबा चेयर करेंगी और इस सूरत हाल का जायजा लिया जाएगा और डिस्कशन होगा इसी हवाले से कि ये जो प्रपोज्ड मीटिंग दिल्ली में होने जा रही है.
This is the first contact between the leadership in Kashmir and New Delhi after the abrogation of Article 370. All the political leaders, including 3 former chief ministers, Farooq Abdullah, Omar Abdullah and Mehbooba Mufti, were arrested during an unprecedented clampdown on the 5th of August 2019. Nearly 2 years later, the Gupkar Alliance, formed to campaign for the restoration of special status to Jammu and Kashmir, has indicated its willingness to join the talks. At the meeting, the Kashmiri parties are likely to raise restoration of Article 370 and statehood and assembly elections due since 2018. The BJP has welcomed the decision of an all-party meeting.
प्रधानमंत्री कार्यालय से 24 तारीख को दिल्ली में होने वाली ऑल पार्टी मीटिंग के लिए बुलाया गया है. इस बार पुनः जम्मू कश्मीर से सभी राजनीतिक दलों के नेताओं को दिल्ली में उनसे मिलने के लिए निमंत्रण हमें प्राप्त हुआ है.
The question is, will this be a photo op or beginning of a long-awaited political process in Jammu and Kashmir after abrogation of Article 370? The regional parties who have been demanding reversal of August 5 decision says honest lies with the centre. In Srinagar, Nazir Masoodi for NDTV.
And the Parliamentary Standing Committee on IT has decided to summon representatives of Facebook, Google, YouTube and other social media intermediaries in the coming weeks to examine their policies on safeguarding citizens' rights on social media and prevent the misuse of social media platforms, NDTV has learnt. Initially, Facebook representatives had responded by saying that their company policies do not allow them to appear in person before a committee because of their COVID-19 related protocol policies. But the chairman of the Parliamentary Committee, Shashi Tharoor, has now ordered officials to direct Facebook that its officials will have to appear in person before the committee, since the Parliament Secretariat does not allow virtual meetings. Shashi Tharoor has also offered that the Parliament Secretariat is ready to make arrangements to provide vaccination facilities to Facebook officials if they so need them.